Wildlife comes naturally to Muscatatuck. Why does it come here? Why does it thrive here? Sit back and we'll give you an unusual bird's-eye perspective of this refuge to help you understand this unique and beautiful place. A bird's-eye view of Muscatatuck is the one seen by the refuge's most numerous visitors, wildlife visitors. Twice a year, hundreds of thousands of migrating birds fly over Indiana on their way to summer nesting sites here and further north, or winter resting and feeding grounds further south. After long hours of flying over farmlands and cities, suddenly the bird's sharp eyes see 1,500 acres of shining wetlands and sparkling lakes fringed by open meadows, and nearly 4,000 acres of thick woodlands, a patchwork oasis of welcoming habitats. 200 years ago, the bird's eye view along the route was very different. Endless woodlands covered the terrain, and lush wetlands fringed the network of rivers that crossed the central states. But the scenery was about to change. As settlers arrived, they cleared the land for crops. In most parts of Indiana, farmers thrived, and the natural areas grew further and further apart until 75% of the forests had been felled and 85% of the wetlands drained. But Muscatatuck was different. Here, farming was often difficult. The low-lying fields were hard to drain, and the farms were often flooded. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recognized a different potential in this land, and in 1966, they were able to open Indiana's first national wildlife refuge here. Today, it stretches over nearly 8,000 acres, 5 miles long by 3 miles wide. Today, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has over 500 national wildlife refuges nationwide, and more are added each year. Our mission here is to conserve, protect, and enhance fish and wildlife and their habitat for the continuing benefit of the American people. The National Wildlife Refuge System is the only network of federal lands specifically dedicated to wildlife and habitat conservation. Early spring in Muscatatuck. The flyway over the refuge is busy with birds on their long migrations to their nesting grounds here to Canada and Alaska. Some have come from as far away as South America. Muscatatuck puts out a welcome map, with its wetlands, meadows, and woodlands just greening up for spring. Water has been moved around the refuge through pipes and control structures to provide ideal habitats for the weary migrants. If you're a shorebird, the mudflats will catch your eye. Looks like there'll be plenty of probing spots there. The mudflats are created by draining low open areas surrounded by dikes, and come fall, they'll serve a very different purpose. If you're a migrant goose or a duck, you'll most likely head for the shallow water of the marshes. It might be a little crowded, up to 15,000 birds at peak time, but there's plenty of food for everybody. Once you've rested and fed for a few days, you'll be ready to fly on further north. An occasional tundra swan might glide in on broad, strong wings and share your feeding marsh. Or, if you're a great blue heron, the awesomeness of a bald eagle crossing your fishing spot might cause a moment of alarm. All through the marshes is lush vegetation which provides good nesting sites, so you might decide to stay on for the summer. If you do, you'll have plenty of noisy neighbors, and some nosy ones too. River otters are making a comeback at Muscatatuck, thanks to a reintroduction program launched here in 1995 by the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. Muscatatuck's expansive wetlands and abundant fish made it a perfect site. Once common in Indiana, river otters were wiped out by overtrapping and the draining of most of the state's wetlands. Water is abundant here, and the key to attracting wildlife is water. You know, that hydrogen and oxygen stuff that falls from the sky. Water winds down creeks, collects in marshes, and eventually makes big rivers. The refuge rightly takes its name from the river which forms its southern boundary. A Plankashaw Indian word, Muscatatuck, means land of winding waters, and those winding waters and the creeks leading to it are today the lifeblood of the refuge. One of the refuge's most colorful birds is the wood duck. If you were a wood duck, what sort of real estate would make you choose Muscatatuck for your year-round home? You're a cut above those other ducks who like to nest on the ground. You're looking for something with a view, something a little historical. If you're a wood duck, that means a hole in an old tree. And do we have a deal for you? Areas of lowland woods on the refuge are flooded and drained throughout the year so that the trees stay healthy and provide wood ducks with the nesting habitat they need. With so little bottomland forest left elsewhere in the state, Muscatatuck is vital to the wood duck population. Soon after you've chosen your nesting hole and built your nest, the woods around you fill with song as migrating warblers and other songbirds pass through or find themselves a safe nesting spot. For many endangered or threatened species, national wildlife refuges such as Muscatatuck are the difference between survival and extinction. As wetlands have been drained and forests felled, national wildlife refuges play an increasingly vital role in preserving the diversity of our wildlife for future generations. By protecting and maintaining rare and biologically rich ecosystems, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service provides habitats for migratory and resident wildlife species that now have few places to go. By May, your eggs have hatched, and you're out early in the morning with a flotilla of ducklings following you. You'll pass stately great egrets who have recently arrived on the refuge, and you might run into one of Muscatatuck's other full-time residents, the copper-belly water snake. It's no threat to your youngsters, though. This beautiful and harmless snake is common on the refuge, but rare elsewhere because of the loss of wetland habitats nationally. In other parts of its range, the copper-belly water snake is on the federal threatened species list. Other full-time residents of the refuge will also cross your path. Raccoons and white-tailed deer, great blue herons and turkeys are all part of Muscatatuck's varied ecosystem. As the heat and humidity of summer begin to bear down on the land, your youngsters will be learning to fly. In the evenings, they might share the airspace with the endangered Indiana bat, which comes to Muscatatuck in the summer to feed on the abundant insect life over the wetlands. The arrival of the blue-winged teal announces the beginning of fall. Soon, other migrants will pass over the refuge on their way south for the winter. Now, instead of mudflats, they will see expansive marshes, which have been created to provide resting and feeding areas for waterfowl, herons, and egrets. Osprey, cormorants, and sandhill cranes may also choose to break their journeys in these hospitable wetlands, while the woodlands welcome again the tiny songbirds. They will rest here to gain strength for their amazingly long migrations across the Gulf of Mexico to Central and South America. Over 250 different species of birds use Muscatatuck Refuge, and this is a common sight for them. Bird watchers. Flocks of bird watchers come to see the flocks of birds, and it's an arrangement that works well for everybody. The refuge is open every day from sunrise to sunset, so that our human visitors can see the wildlife visitors when they're most active, in the early morning and evening. Here, as in every national wildlife refuge, all the plants and animals are protected and should not be harmed. In the southwest corner of the refuge, 10% of our land area is closed to the public and maintained as a waterfowl sanctuary. This area is clearly marked by signs. The tens of thousands of visitors who come each year to enjoy the wildlife and scenery of Muscatatuck are as much a part of the refuge ecosystem as all the animals and plants. In a way, we've created ideal habitats for your needs too. There are 8 hiking trails of various lengths. One starts just behind the visitor center and includes a boardwalk over the marsh where you and the wildlife can watch each other. The Chestnut Ridge Interpretive Trail is accessible to the physically challenged. And on Rehart Lake Hiking Trail, the Hackman Overlook provides an excellent view of the lake with all its varied bird life and shelter from the elements. If you prefer to drive, there are 9 miles of Refuge Road, including a 3-mile self-guided tour. Hunting and fishing are permitted at certain times of year, including an annual Take a Kid Fishing Day in May, which is lots of fun. While hunting and fishing, for your own safety and pleasure, please obey all the regulations and posted signs. For instance, boating is restricted to Stanfield Lake at specific times, and no motors are allowed. For those of you who want to see how the early settlers lived, a visit to Myers Cabin and Barn is a must. Built on the refuge between 1870 and 1900, these structures have been restored and furnished by volunteers. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service welcomes volunteers who want to become involved in the management of this refuge. We have people working on biological, public use, and maintenance projects. Volunteers also operate our wildlife bookstore, where you can buy wildlife guides, how-to books, and other interesting literature. For information about the volunteer program or any other aspect of the refuge, please stop at our information desk in the Visitor Center or the Refuge office. Education is one of our high priorities, and our staff is delighted to assist groups visiting the refuge. As part of the National Wildlife Refuge System, Muscatatuck is your refuge. Please tell your friends and family about this special place and explore some of the other refuges throughout the United States. We hope you enjoy places like Muscatatuck National Wildlife Refuge, where wildlife comes naturally.
A presentation of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service National Conservation Training Center.